Good evening, this is Pine Leaf Needles, and welcome to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO, and here at LOTRO Players. And tonight we have with us Draculetta,
Hey, everybody.
Ethelros,
Hey.
Braxwolf,
Hello, everybody.
Lily Kate,
Hi, everybody.
and Dang.
Hey, everybody.
And our guest for tonight is Brydra.
Hello.
And today, the big story is we have announcements for Update 13. And the first of these announcements has to do with changes in the Bullroarer server testing. Ethros, you wrote this. What do you know about it?
Well, this update and onwards, at least for this year, from what they said, is that they're changing the way they do testing on Bullroarer. It seems like to me that they're changing it more to a way they do beta testing for expansions, where they have a set amount of days for each beta period, then they close the server, load it up again, and then start over with new threads and stuff like that. The first major change they're making is that it will only be open for a few select days. From what they said, it was from Thursday through Monday, meaning that they'll lose about 2 or 3 days worth of testing each week compared to what they used to do. Which is obviously a lot of time.
Yeah, definitely a different format.
I'm not sure whether that is good for people to be all focused on testing on at the same time, because having it spread throughout the week, people are just going to be coming in and out because, hey, there's plenty of time to test, right? So that's one possible way of looking at it. Of course, the other way is, there are a few people who are really dedicated to testing, like those who are there every day doing it, making really in-depth notes and stuff like that. For those kind of people, it does negatively affect them.
Probably the ones who are affected the most are those who weren't able to do testing during the weekends.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other change, which is not quite as significant, is that for each update that they're testing, they will close all threads that are related to those before it. This is wrong about before, but yeah, this is kind of to keep it focused on that, update all the feedback. So when that update is done testing, they'll close those threads and then move on to the next one. I think it's kind of good to keep it clean, because we currently have threads from all the way back to updates like last year, maybe the year before that.
Yes, and there was a clarification later on that by update they meant for the ones for 13, then when they start doing 13.1, they will lock the 13 threads.
Yeah, that was my bad. I originally thought it meant per round, so like they would have round 1 for update 13, then round 2, then round 3, and they would close in between those. Yeah, I was wrong about that, so whoops.
Very well. Very well. Anyone else have any comments on the changes to Bullroarer before we go into the patch notes?
It allows it to be predictable when Bullroarer is going to go up, and so that can allow people to plan ahead of time. It is bad for the people who don't have their weekends free, but for a lot of people, I think it'll allow them to plan ahead a little bit more.
Is it true that there's no NDA with this testing?
Yeah,
that would be why there are articles on LOTRO Players about the beta.
From what I'm aware of, these public tests beta stuff like this is always no NDA.
Yeah, everything that's not an expansion is usually without an NDA. On Bullroarer, at least.
Right. So until they announce the next expansion and start doing beta testing for that, we won't have to worry about NDAs. Unless, of course, you're in some other program that is not on Bullroarer, of course.
That's right.
Right. It's like members of the council, for example, can't discuss what's on their special servers and stuff
And
like
people
that.
on Palantir and yeah, all that stuff.
Right. Very well. Let's go then into the patch notes. And of course, we have the major items of note are, first of all, we have 2 new areas, the Entwood and Flooded Isengard.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure no one had anything they want to say before I went on.
Well, I mean, we are going to
This one's part of
we
a
can
separate article.
go in
so-
depth on each of the separate articles while we talk about them, while we go through the points. So let's actually go ahead and mention the first article about the videos there and how they go
Right.
through
You
the
did
zones.
you did some landscape videos, it looks like.
Mhm.
Or Draculetta looks like posted them. But I thought they were endings.
They were my videos, but I was so busy processing other videos that I didn't have time to write the articles for them. But these did show up on Massively and some other sites as well. Big thanks to them for sharing it. And let's actually go ahead and have some discussion about the different regions. First of all, spoiler alert on the feed, because I'm already showing footage of the landscape
yes, I
there.
should tell you.
And
Yes,
spoiler
I
alert,
should
obviously,
tell
on
you
what we're talking about. So now, Pine.
Yes, I should tell you that I did not watch these videos to avoid such spoilers.
All right. Well, you're not going to be spoiled. So there are 2 zones. There's Flooded Isengard, which is technically in a separate place than real Isengard, which is what I actually predicted going into it. That if you went to the south from, or if you went to the north from Helm's Deep, you'd be going into Flooded Isengard. If you went south from Dunland, you'd be going into normal Isengard. And there are places to jump over a log is literally what you do to port between the 2 areas. There's a Rohirrim that allows you to jump over a log. It's the weirdest teleport ever in LOTRO, but it gets the job done. So, but the new Entwood area is yet another different version of Fangorn. It's pretty amazing how they've been able to continually have all these different versions of Fangorn, and it has several locations like the cave where Merry and Pippin stay in, and some other important things as well. So Tharos, if you want to talk about the landscape a little bit.
Yeah, the Entwood is, as you said, is another version of Fangorn. This one's kind of the most pleasant. There isn't the mobs are mostly natural ones rather than like orcs or stuff like that. 2 main, I think, lore areas are as you said, the place where Merry and Pippin stayed with the draft, and I can't remember the name now. Dingle, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and also where the Entmoot takes place. The other, I think, major feature of the Entwood, at least, is they finally have updated waterfalls.
Yes.
That took 7 years.
Yes, they updated the visualization of waterfalls to where now they're not the gross, like, clumpy looking thing. They actually have rainbows inside. One of them did, at least. And it's like one of the most beautiful waterfalls I've seen. They looked somewhat similar to Swotor's waterfalls, if I remember right. So if you know what that looks like, especially on the Jedi path where you go into that one cave, it's very similar to that kind of thing in this zone when you're going to where Merry and Pippin were. And it's amazing. I can't wait to see, moving forward, some of the places in Gondor with, assuming that there's some water areas in there. It'll be really exciting to see future water areas, and hopefully they'll go back and update some of the older ones as well, because it's such a small little touch, but it's the one thing that feels like that the graphics are limited in. Everything else, it feels like they're in the landscape. Yeah, everything else, it feels like that they're really pushing what their engines are able to do, except for the waterfalls, and I'm glad they're finally updated those. I think it's a pretty big deal actually for immersion.
Yeah, they're not perfect yet. You can still notice the differences between that and then just the running water, but it is definitely a major improvement, and they're definitely not as much of an eyesore on the landscape as they used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
the last major thing with this place is that it is separate from the rest of the game, at least as far as I know. I think I heard some people managing to get through it to the stone beams. I think they kind of connected but blocked off. I think that's the way they did, like with branches and stuff. Which is, I don't know exactly why they did that. Maybe it's because it's meant to be more of a like a secret area that most people aren't able to stumble into. But I would like to be able to just walk in at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And the other area is, of course, Flooded Isengard. And that was kind of limited, I felt like, because they are kind of stuck in the old Isengard that they designed from several years ago. And now they're having to basically, show what it looks like now, but they can't change like the design of the walls and things like that. And so it actually looks kind of dated, to be honest, even though it's a flooded area. At least I felt anyway. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I should be more precise. The open landscape part of it felt a bit dated.
Yeah.
As you were saying, like the textures and stuff, they're kind of, you can tell it's a zone from years ago. It's definitely not to par with East or West Rohan to that extent. However, there are like a couple of interior places inside the gatehouse, which actually look pretty good, with the water coming through everywhere and an orc being crushed by a chandelier.
Yes. It's the best part ever.
For him. Yeah, but I think the best part of it was the I can't remember what it's called, just the underground Isengard, where you used to be held as a slave.
Yes, you major spoiler alert, you actually get to go down in there.
Yep, and it is pretty much wrecked.
It is completely messed up, and what's really weird is they still have like the fires on down below, so you can, and which I think is a beta glitch or something, but you can actually see down and see the all the stuff below completely wrecked as well. That's now submerged, probably like 30 feet underwater now.
Yeah, I actually like that you could see how it used to be, structured and all that, with the paths and the gates and stuff. Just put out the fires because it looks weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall it's pretty good. I think they were just kind of set back by how old Isengard itself looked. I think the other major issue I found is that it just seemed very empty. Like, I think in the books they're meant to be ents and trees, or at least ents wandering around everywhere.
Yeah, it definitely feels
there was no
like
one, absolutely no one there.
It definitely feels like we came in after the ents were long gone. So
but the ents stay around until after the ring is destroyed.
Exactly.
Which is even bigger a problem then.
Yeah.
So that's the other major concern. Other than that, I actually quite liked it for the most part.
Yeah, I think that they did a good job with what they could, especially in the underground places. Some of the flooded areas are absolutely amazing. And they did a great job redesigning some of the older areas. So, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Very well. Then let's go on to the inventory revamp, where bags can now be resized by dragging them. Additional bag space can be purchased, and inventory spaces can be dragged from one bag to another, among other changes. And I believe somebody here did an inventory change video.
Nonsense, Pineleaf. Yeah. Let's go ahead and discuss how this all works. So, first of all, there is, at least on beta, there's a 7th bag worth of slots now. So they did add another inventory spot, and now they're selling them in groups of 5, because that's actually how you move your inventory around, which I'll get into a little bit later. So instead of having to buy an entire bag for $10 or 1,000 turbine points, you can now buy them for 333 a piece. So it does,
and I think that's actually a good way of doing it, because I think at least for like free to play players and maybe premium too, having that $9.95 to work towards is pretty intimidating goal. Having them be split is kind of okay. 300, it's not too bad. I think I can get it, and obviously the next one comes along and think, I think I can manage that too.
Yeah.
It might kind of, I don't want to say trick, but maybe just make it seem like it's a more reachable goal, even though you're eventually getting the same thing.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed right away is that all the bags can be sized to however you want horizontally or vertically. You can drag slots into whichever bags you want. And so you could have just two bags of differing sizes. You could have, all the same bags exactly how they work, just stretched out or squished in. You can have, any combination of those bags now you can have with their inventory how it wants to be. Someone on Twitter, I don't remember who, suggested they should add a scroll bar, and I kind of agree with them, especially if you throw everything into one bag. It can get to be pretty big.
I believe that was Krell.
I think you're right. And
Yeah.
another feature is that you can now lock items straight from the bags so that you don't accidentally sell them or things like that, which is a nice quality of life feature.
I'm not sure what the colors are about when you have it set in
Yeah,
edit.
I don't know. That's one thing I haven't figured out. I do notice that it has red, green, and blue, or yellow, or whatever, in each
Purple and
one.
pink.
In each one of the bags, it has those three colors, and then when you start combining them, it gets confused as to what colors they actually want. So I don't know. I don't understand the color scheme system, but if someone does, feel free to write in lotraplayers.mymiddleearth@gmail.com and let us know, because I have no
There
idea.
might be pine leaf logic in it.
And
Yeah, this was the only update video I watched. And I'm looking forward to having separate bags for my bits and bobs.
yeah,
Especially one for my instruments, one for Lily Kate's junk, and one for the rest of the junk. So I like this change.
yeah, and I do like how there's the search bar as well, right in the bag. That makes a big difference.
Well,
Allows you to
actually, the
quickly
search
find
bar in the
stuff.
bag is not new.
Yeah,
always
that's
been
what
there.
someone was saying.
Or at least since
but
the last few updates.
the last few updates it came in, but I didn't notice it, so I really like the search bar. That's
That's
there
because
now.
maybe that's because if you were like me, you were running in huge bag or something like that.
Nope.
Of course,
I just didn't notice it.
the final thing with the inventory thing is the store button on the small one next to the lock and search.
Yes, but it is probably the smallest store button that we have aside from maybe the myth or coin button. So I'm not that opposed to it.
I'm not bothered, but I think it would be nice to, like pretty much with all these things, they should be, is if you've bought everything that you can buy from that area, that the store button goes away, because there's no point
Yeah.
having it if you've got it.
I agree.
Everything there, so.
I agree. So what does everyone think about these bag changes? Do you like them? They do ruin huge bag, and there's no word yet if it'll be updated because the person who updates it hasn't responded since Helm's Deep essentially. So what do you guys think? Is this a good change? Thalros.
Oh, okay. I'm pretty pleased with it actually. I think overall I prefer huge bag box since it's not working. I'm mostly content with how this is. The main thing I would want from it is a sort button or function like huge bag has to sort it by the type it is, like gear or legendary items or food or crafting materials. But aside from that though, I'm content with it. I think it's a good improvement.
All right, Sprydra.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's a lot, since I'm a free-to-play person, I've already bought all the bags, but I think it's a good idea because it's nowhere near as intimidating. You can just, deed your way to it rather than having to go, oh, $9.95. I'm not going to get another bag.
Yeah, and also now you can get an extra bag, so there you go.
Yeah, it'd be even better.
Yeah.
All right, Lillicate, what do you think?
I like it. As I said, I want a separate bag for my instruments. I always keep a bag for my instruments, a bag for Lily Cape's usual questing stuff, and then the rest is kind of assorted junk, really. So I would probably split mine into 3 bags.
All right.
So I like the changes. Yeah, I like the way you can resize.
Yeah. Drac, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I too like to keep all my bags kind of separated, and I kind of try to do it now, but it's kind of hard, and this looks like it's going to do exactly what I've been wanting to do all along. So I'm pretty excited to see this happen.
Krell from the chat says the 5-slot thingy actually gets renumbered and colored when you lock it. It probably makes it easier to deal with. He says that we'll hear from the inventory guy on Monday, so maybe we'll find out more stuff then.
Yeah, that'll come back in later in the show, I'm guessing, when we talk about the stream.
Yeah. And anyone else? What do you guys think about the bag changes?
I just want to make a note that obviously there's nothing to really, we might complain about there not being a sort key, but there's nothing to complain about what they were able to do.
Right.
The one thing I do want to note is that huge bag is not completely broken, but it certainly doesn't work ideally with these changes. If you go past, if you buy that extra bag, then you have to use the window mode instead of the widget mode. And of course, I always use the widget mode, so I'm now having to learn how to use the window mode if I want to be able to keep my searchability. And there's also a little problem on the I button because of the changes there. So a couple of things you have to keep and worry about, workarounds that you need to do in order to get HugeBag to work properly. But you could theoretically keep on using it if you wanted to have that sortability.
All right.
Very well, then we'll go on to the next item, which is the region revamps, which are the North Down, the Troll Shawls, and the Misty Mountains. And I went into each of those 3 regions to see what it was like. And I noticed that the North Down starts around level 24, seems to go up to about level 30, maybe 31. The highest level mob I saw were the level 30 mob, level 29ish, and probably some level 30s just beyond that in the east side of Esteldine. I did not go into Doldinan, so I don't know what level that area is, but I presume it's about the same way. They did keep the elite zones that they had before the revamp, so if you're afraid they're going to get rid of all the elite monsters, they did not do that.
Which I am really glad about, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really worried they were going to get rid of that.
I know I checked the Troll Shores earlier today, and those are all the same, just re-leveled.
Yeah, there is one thing they did in the Troll Shawls, and that is that the trolls that come out at night, they made 2 changes to them. One, actually, no, I can't be sure about that second one because no, they are, okay, the first thing they did is that they are now normals instead of elites. But I was thinking at the time I was in there that they're fully aggressive, but I remember is, of course, fully aggressive and threatening both have red bars, so you can't be too sure when you're just looking at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get why they're normals now, but I'm guessing because they're on the road, maybe.
Yeah, because
that's probably it. Yeah.
They're on the road, so that's why I'm thinking that they might have made them so they're fully aggressive. I mean, in which case it'll balance out.
They could have at least kept them signatures, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, as overpowered as we are now, elites are no problem,
Yeah.
but signatures at least, I would think.
Very well. And so the Troll Shawls are now levels 35 to 39, so it's a little bit higher than it used to be. And the Misty Mountains are now level 40 to 45. So the Troll Shawls leads right into the Misty Mountains then.
Yeah, and then you can go right down to Eregia and then Moria right after you're done with Misty's. So it has a good flow now, I think, on that side of the world. You no longer have to go back and forth all over Eriador just to get all your questing done.
Yeah, the only bump I can see is going from Lowlands, which is like up to 30 or 31, to Troll Shawls, which is 35. So you would have to do some epic stuff or skirmishes in between to get up to that level.
Yeah, that's the tricky one. Well, and if you're going from the North Downs, it's the same way since that ends at 29 or 30.
Well, Evendim picks up right at 30.
Yeah, Evendim is it. And the first half of Evendim, and since I usually have more fun in the first half of Evendim than the second half, they could probably do the first half of Evendim and move over to the Troll Shawls.
Yeah.
Yep.
But at least now both sides have progressions where you can go, straight up to on one direction and don't even have to worry about backtracking now, which I think is a really important change.
Yeah, it is probably worth noting, though, that none of these individual zones are on the scale of Evendim or Moria, of course. At least
Yeah.
in terms of like new quests and stuff like that. The releveling is significant, and they did add some new bits and pieces of like objects like barrels or wagons and stuff in Northdowns. I saw a few of those added, and when they put in new NPCs, both like quest ones and the ones you don't interact with, they're just there doing their own thing. Those are they're using the newer models they've used in Rohan.
All right. One thing to note concerning the Misty Mountains is that the level 45 area is Goblin Town. It's now level 45 instead of level 49 or 50 like it was in the past.
Yeah, it used to be
And
49 and then led to 50 and very quickly got to 50 elite and was pretty difficult. So I think it's good
right,
now. I actually went through the whole
yeah,
thing and there's very, very few signatures or elites now in that area. And there's also quests now that take you through there, so a little bit.
right. Now I noticed that most of the mobs in the entrance area, which is the only part where I went through, are greenies. So you start out with swarms, and I guess maybe you find some normals and maybe some signatures for some major fights.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the only other major thing is that they haven't changed the swift travel or the stable travel in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
which
a
of
big
course
thing.
was desperately needed, and they didn't do it, which is very disappointing to me.
All right, then. Then we'll
One
go on to the end.
one small thing that I noted, and this is a very small thing, but in Golem's Cave, there's actually, I think they just kept the worms that were there already. They still have level 49 worms in there. So I don't know if that's intentional or not, but they do have some tougher stuff when you actually go into his cave.
Ooh, all right. Did you bug that?
I'm going to. I was too busy
All
getting ready
right.
for adventures, but I'm definitely going to go back and bug it for sure.
All right. Then we'll head on to the Entmoors. And free-to-play and premium players can now purchase more passes using Mithril coins in order to play PvMP with the Freeps. So that's good news for some people, and some people don't care because and Brannick says he doesn't like renting things. And he considers that to be renting. But what do you say? Let's see, Ethelros and I presume Ending were involved in the video here.
Yep, and I think that this is a good change. It's very good that they're allowing Freeps in to the Etmoors finally, because on a lot of servers there's more creeps than Freeps because the creep sides had the free advantage, I suppose. And so now that they're letting in more Freeps by not making them pay VIP and paying the hopefully significantly smaller fee of whatever it is to buy for a season, I think this will get a lot more people into PvP. I kind of wish that they made it to where you just buy a one-time thing as opposed to a season, but still a season is usually there's only like 2 a year. So depending on the cost, it could be a really good deal, and also allowing
Did
them.
you say a season? I thought it was 6 hours.
It's 20 mithril coins for 6 hours, and you can buy that multiple times to stack up the time.
Well, that's not near as good as I thought.
Oh, you thought the season was a lot longer than 6 hours. Okay.
Yes, I did.
There is a minor point that I was actually wrong about in my article I wrote, which is that even if you're not in the Etmoors, the timer counts down. At least on Bolrora, that might change, and I hope it does. But right now, it'll tick down even if you're not in the Moors. So it wouldn't really be wise to stack up unless you fully intend on staying in there.
Okay, that sounds nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I sparred Ethelros, it was not even close, even though I was upgraded to level 95.
Oh yeah, that's scaling.
Which by the way, now you can spar against very abnormally leveled players in the Etmoors, which is something you couldn't even do in epic battles. So that's a big improvement, I think.
Yeah, the scaling. I mean, like, I think a lot of us knew it was going to come at some point because they actively said that it was coming at some stage. They had plans for it, but I don't think anyone expected it to come like this update so soon after Helm's Deep. I am glad for it because, I mean, I thought for a very long time that I thought it was kind of silly that you had of them making people who want to do PvP level all the way to level cap, do all these deeds and virtues and quests and stuff just to be able to compete. This goes a long way of at least letting people kind of compete in the malls if they're not at level cap. I personally would like this to go further though and completely separate PvP and PvE, so people who want to do PvP don't have to do any part of PvE in order to get to the top gear and all that stuff. But this is a good step.
Yeah, I think one thing that this will really change is whenever we have our next level cap increase, now Freeps will be able to go to the Etmors without being at whatever the new level cap is, and being able to be at cap. And while they will be weaker because they don't have their new armor, they don't even have the armor they'll have when they get to 105 or whatever the new level cap is. But at least the Etmors will not die every time that there's a new expansion coming out.
And of course, there is the additional benefit of, because you know how in PvP, like they tend to say, creeps have the numbers advantage, and that's how like they used to balance it. And in some ways, it seems like they have continued doing that. With letting free-to-play and premiums go into the Moors, it might offset the balance and maybe bring it a bit closer to even numbers, meaning that they can finally buff creeps to a point where they're actually, in terms of potency, on par with creeps, and hopefully it won't get as many complaints as it usually does.
Yeah, definitely. One good thing that I just thought about was that Mithril coins have been dropping in Hobbit presents and things like that. So maybe someone like Brannick that doesn't want to spend actual money, you can just buy a little bit of time and test out what PvP is like.
Well, he made it clear to me that he has absolutely no interest in doing it as long as it's the way it is in the current system.
Yeah,
that includes the one proposed here.
It's not my preferred way either, but I guess it's just the way least likely to annoy some form of the community.
It's probably my least favorite of the ideas that I had of how they could have implemented this. But it is an improvement, I think. It gives more options to the player at the end of the day, at least.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll go from the Etmors into resource instances. There will now be new resource instances at level 95. And that will be nice because my scholar was finding it painful going all over the place trying to find scholar nodes in the Western Rohan. Now, I've been doing that for the last couple of days since I just made Kindred, and now I can start trying to make stuff with this.
It is good they're still going with these resource instances. I think, my history might be wrong here, but I think the only times they've had these are Moria, which came after launch, Rohan, which had them with Hypal, so technically, people would be doing them at launch, and then this. I don't think Mirkwood or Isengard had them.
Right, and in fact, I thought the entire idea of resource instances was dead until they reintroduced them in Rohan.
Yeah.
All right, and now mail. Mail, they've changed it. Okay, one is mail cannot be sent to you by players who are on your ignore list. 2, you can have up to 10 attachments instead of 1 attachment on a single mail message. And 3, VIP players no longer need to visit a mailbox to open up their mail. Though it would have been nice, I think, that that whenever you clicked on it, a Hobbit mail delivery person came up to you and delivered your mail instead of it just happening out of thin air. But you can't have everything.
Complicated animation, I think. If
I know.
Standing on top of a mountain, the Hobbit would walk across the air to get you.
And it would get annoying after a while, I think.
Well, yes, it would get annoying after a while. You do have a point with that.
The 10 attachments thing, because I know they mentioned that the cost would increase the more items you put on there. I'm not sure if this is fully implemented on Boro yet, but when I tested this with Andang, I sent him 10 items. Some were like stacks of a few. The total cost was 40 silver, so not much at all, really.
Yeah, a really good deal.
Now, one of the other things to note is that you can send something that's bound to account to another character on your account without any trouble. Actually, I think these are store items only. The bound to account items that are from the store, you can send them to another of your characters. If you want to do it to a player that's the character that's not on your account, then it will cost mithril to do so. But then in the past, you couldn't even do it at all. Some people, though, are complaining that it might set up gold sellers and stuff like that.
I think it could possibly have some people try it, but at least the way I'm looking at it, it seems like it will be overly complicated for a gold farmer to do, like continuously and on a larger scale. That said, it probably would be better just to not do this at all, because it seems like a pretty silly idea to me.
Right. So does anyone know what the mithril coin cost is to send such items through there?
No, because I don't think very many people have actually experimented with it yet to see what these items are and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you got a good point with that. Very well, then we'll head on to housing, and that the cost of additional storage has been reduced. Before it was 5 gold and 125 gold. Now it's 3 gold and 27 gold, I believe. Or is it 3,927 instead of 525, 125? I think it's something like that.
It's significantly cheaper.
Yes, significantly cheaper, yes. And here's an interesting one. Kinships. Kins are no longer disbanded for not having enough members.
Yay!
That's a good thing.
I think it's a really good thing.
I guess.
I'm sure Mist will be happy about that one.
Yes.
She no longer needs help in order to start her kins.
She's gonna have
She
so
won't
many
be.
kin houses. It's gonna be. She won't have enough characters to earn money for the kin houses. It's gonna be terrible.
On the one hand, it is good for people who, like Mist, who want to have their own kin house and stuff like that. But on the other hand, you can have kinships that just end up not doing well or floundering, and because they don't automatically disband, someone might just leave it there and like they've stopped playing and the kinship is still in existence and that name is still taken.
That's true.
So that could create the problem of just cobwebby kinships that aren't being removed.
Yeah.
It'd be the housing situation all over again.
Maybe they should put a limit on it after so many people go and act. I'm assuming that one person has to still be active in it, but maybe not. I don't know.
And going
That's
back to what you were previously talking about, Corel and Frontalist in the chat are both saying it's 2 mithril coins per item that you send.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably why they did the foreclosure change that they did earlier on. You can start to see how some of these things are falling into kind of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
All right, very well. And now for crafting, they added a button to disable item inscription, which will cause crafting items to halt because what happened is that whenever you got a crit on some items, you would be asked to type in a name for it. And that was a big pain for people who were doing a great deal of crafting, went off AFK while it was crafting, then came back, and of course they got the stupid inscription message, which you find very annoying. So now you can do AFK crafting without having to worry about getting a crit, because there are times when people wish they could disable crits because of that.
This one I know from reading the forums that people wanted this for years. They've been asking for it a lot, I've seen. So I think it's really good to finally have this.
Yeah.
I think they were asking for.
Sorry.
I think what I saw people asking for was crit disabler, but this is probably better than what they were asking for.
Yeah, it's annoying enough when you're there crafting and you get it repeatedly. never mind going away and coming back thinking that your batch is going to be done and you sat on the first one waiting to input a name.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. And now we have Thoros. You seem to like pets, it looks like.
Actually, there was a few things from these notes I wanted to mention. If still have time for that.
Okay.
First one is that they have added meta deeds for each zone, new ones, and they've kind of changed the rewards for how deeds give rewards now. Firstly, is that the new deed, meta deed for each zone, like one for Breed and one for Shire, they give you marks. I think they give you a virtue. I can't remember exactly, but they also give you a loot box.
Yes.
For the level of whatever that zone is, generally. Additionally, every deed for each region now gives a small amount of marks. I think it's like 20 or something like that, and then higher for the harder to do deeds. And I think some of those maybe give loot boxes too. I'm not sure, but that is a significant thing too.
There are also a large number of deeds that seem to be giving the heritage runes, because I came in and my bags were filled with heritage runes as soon as I logged in to Buller the first time from all these deeds.
Mine was pretty much as bad when I logged into Buller. My bags were filled with loot boxes.
Yeah, they
my loot
gave a lot of things for sure.
Yeah. Well, my loot boxes couldn't fit in the first time I was in. I had to log out and log back in. It was the third time where I logged in where I finally had all the loot boxes, because all the stuff was being in some hidden storage area and couldn't be awarded until the third time I was logged in through the space.
It's probably worth noting that the new deeds do not give turbine points, just for the record.
That's true, but it's still really satisfying to see all that stuff fly up on your screen the first time you log in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's awesome.
I know there's also a meta deed for completing the meta deeds for Eriador, and probably one for Ravania too. So.
A meta deed for the meta deed. Awesome.
I actually like those in Dunland, because I know they had a meta deed for the quests, exploration and slayer deeds, where you would get additional deed completion for that. So I actually like this. I like having deeds to firmly say that you've done everything in that zone.
Yeah,
that's good.
But all those loot boxes is okay.
Yeah, I think Pride was Crow, because he suggested things, such as having a key as a reward for the meta completion, or in some way some sort of completion of one of the deeds, so that you can open some of those loot boxes with offset, which I actually think is a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Well, most of them I'll be throwing away, because who needs a Shire loot box when you are in Rohan? Unless you're, of course, Draculetta and you're trying to get off the force.
I was literally about to say that.
Thanks for bringing that up again.
Every episode.
I realize that.
The second thing is that, which is Drac is going to be very happy about this one, is that there are now deeds for epic battles that if you get so many promotion points, you get a class trait point.
Well, there's a deed I'll never get done.
Yes.
It is nice, though, that they're giving another... I mean, that's a decent reward for epic battles. There haven't been very good rewards for them, and so I'm glad that they're at least giving us something.
Yes, but the thing that's really nasty is that you can buy promotion points.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Plus the fact that for the first level of the deed, you need 100 promotion points. I think it's like 200 for the next one, and then 300
yes,
for
it is
the third.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, even leaving aside the whole buying thing, which is basically buying class point to an extent, I don't think any kind of repeatable content should be giving class points. Even if it wasn't epic battles or if it was skirmishes or instances, I don't think they should be giving class points for those. The quests aren't so bad, because I think generally speaking, everybody does them. But this is just go.
I disagree with those. I think as long as they limit the number that they're giving, if they gave like 10 class points, then you have to do this in order to be good in the raid and like that sort of thing, then I would be upset with it. But just 3 that are, fairly down and hard to get, if you're doing all that work for epic battles, I think it's a worthwhile thing. Now, yeah, the buying thing kind of sucks, but I think it's still a good thing.
So, okay. So they're not making any changes to the trees. They're just giving us additional skill points for repeating in-game content. I'm assuming that most people have at least their main part of the tree completely filled by the time they've done level cap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Which means
by 85.
Which means you're basically going to have to do 200 improvements on your epic battle, skill points where to get a point that's actually going to be able to be spendable in one of your alternate trees, right?
As of right
Unless
now,
you
how
have
the
to be
trees
in an
are.
odd location, yeah.
Yeah, because one doesn't do you any good. So you get 100 done, and you're like, well, I got to do that all over again, so I can even advance my skill tree.
That's true.
I just think,
if you're at the end.
To me, I wonder who's going to do enough epic battle. I mean, they're at least a half an hour each. Who's going to do enough epic battles? People are already complaining that they're too boring to do. To even get enough to spend a skill point.
I know when I logged in, I had already gotten enough promotion points to get the first tier, which is, I think I had like 112 promotion points to actually rack up pretty quickly. If you're the higher, more points you get, the easier it is to get points.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. But even so, yeah, it is a lot to get like the full 3 of them. I just don't like it. Even if it wasn't epic battles, if it was a skirmishes or instances where you're doing deeds over and over, like grinding deeds, it still would be a bad idea in my opinion.
That's definitely true, but I think it is a reward for players who actually go and do that. I don't think that it's enough of a reward for people to feel like that they have to grind it out, but I could be wrong. Maybe, for me anyway, I don't feel like it's enough of a reward to where I'm like, now I have to do epic battles. Why is Turbine adding this? I think it's more just a reward for the players who have gone on long enough in the epic battles, and they get a nice little perk.
Well, yeah, and especially because usually that first tier of the alternate tree is something like plus 2% damage or something like that. I mean, something you're not going to really even notice hardly.
Yeah.
Especially with how overpowered we already are.
Some of the class trees give like skills for the first tier as a way in, but not all of them, yeah.
And usually those starter skills aren't the best since you're already at the end of one of them.
I know my master, at least, the yellow tree gives you Stormlaw and AoE stun from the first tier, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. On the champion, there's nothing like that.
Okay, anyone else have anything to add?
On that subject, no.
All right, you have another subject then?
The last one that springs to mind right now, which is they have tweaked character models.
I didn't notice it really.
No, that's why I said tweaked. It really isn't much. The main thing I noticed personally is that my Lawmaster, I think most people know that male elves have terrible, terrible posture. The way they kind of stand, they sort of bend outwards for no reason, and it's probably not healthy.
Especially if you're an immortal and you're going to be needing that back for the next few thousand years.
That's right, yeah. Can't let it slump.
And,
Come on.
I noticed, actually I only noticed after, I think Krell mentioned it on Twitter about them changing character models, and I did notice that the posture is a lot better now. It's still not perfect. They do sort of stand with one foot in front of the other, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But it is definitely better now. They're not sort of swaying. Aside from that, there have been posts in the thread. They actually have a separate thread for it, which have people reporting things like dwarves being more bomber-like, if you know what I mean.
Bomber-like.
They kind of put on some pounds.
Yes.
Rear, and stomach, which is hopefully not intentional, and there are a few other things like not being done properly. The thing I think a problem is arisen from this is that they've also changed the way the slider scales when you're creating a character work, and I think that might actually affect when people are copying characters over, why they look so strange, because the sliders aren't the same. And if that is going to be the case, I think they should at least offer some way of people to change it post creation, at least for a one-off.
Yeah, you'd think.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah, I've talked enough.
Okay. Then we'll go into. Well, Ethros, sounds like you want to talk again because you seem to have a love for pets.
Okay, I put that in the wrong place apparently. Yeah. This came out, I think, like the day before Borrow came up or the same day. Either way, the little friend they've been teasing for update 13 is, as it turns out, a little horn pet. And I was right, because I said it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just
Yeah.
saying, I was right. This is actually
Alright.
going to be, if you look at the image, it's actually one of 3 variants, apparently. I'm guessing they're different forms of the ones you only find, like the older ones and just the fir trees, stuff like that, I'm guessing. This is pretty significant in that it's the first non-combat pet available to non-law masters, since they said they were going to do that, 3 years ago?
A long time ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time
And
ago.
It's a tree.
I like it.
And
Maybe
it's
not
a
that.
tree.
Maybe not that particular model because it was kind of mean, but
Yeah, I don't understand why we have like the evil. I mean, and yes, I'm sure there's like a story element where it's like, all right, you helped these people and now they're like allied with you, and so you have these like many tree things going on after you. But it's just weird. Why is this the first non-combat pet for non-lore masters? Like, there's so many other options, like a squirrel or a cow that walks really slow. Like, I'd be up for that, even though I have a hatred of them after Wildermore. But I mean, this is just, I don't know. I don't.
Let's be honest. For law masters, at least, they've had just as weird pets previously. I mean, have you looked at the bog licker up close? It's very strange.
Yeah, but you don't have to summon it.
Well, you don't have to summon
It's just
this.
weird that this is the only pet that they've given to everyone else. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have thought, because to me, the most logical pet to be the first to give to everyone else would have been something that humans normally have around. Dogs, cats.
I don't know what you're talking about, Punny. There are lots of pet trees around here.
I just
maybe
don't
in
see.
Wales, but not in the U.S.
I just don't. When I think of Middle Earth, I don't think of thousands of hobbits in the Shire having little tiny horons following them around. It just doesn't seem very probable to me. I'm sorry, Atharos.
Now,
Either
what would
way-
be really cool is if the woodworkers could turn around and use that as something they could make their bows out of.
That's
I would love
adorable.
that.
That is
And it
very
makes like a
cruel,
tiny
Max.
little squeak at the end, and you feel horrible. Oh, this needs to happen.
You guys are despicable.
All right. Now, what? Now, apparently, somebody was saying how they about how we enter Isengard. No one wants to own up to that. All right.
I was right about how we were going to enter on Isengard, which I talked about a little bit earlier. How I predicted that they were going to have a way south where that was one version of Isengard, and a way north where that was another version of Isengard, and it wasn't in the same spot like Helm's Deep, which technically that's not the same spot, but you don't have to phase into it this way. You literally just go to Isengard and it's there. You have to phase to the other version, but then you'll be on the other side of the map and you can just walk out to Dunland, and it's a great way of doing it, I think, because you don't have to like right click on a barrel to continue your storyline. It's just right there, and I think that because of the way that the story goes in Isengard, it's a great way to have done it. Obviously, they couldn't have done it with Helm's Deep because of how that story works.
All right then. Let's see. And then, I guess that's for. Let's go to the Boar Isengard live stream, since I presume we're not going to be talking about the big bombshell until we go into
That's
that.
right, we're not. Let's go in somewhat order about these questions. So, I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah, credit to Frickin' Muck for, as usual, doing these transcripts. This one came up very quickly after the surprisingly lengthy amount of questions answered. So yeah, big thanks to him or her for that.
Yeah, I was driving
Yes.
home from college, and there were like all these messages coming from Skype saying, "Andang, you need to get home. There's been major news." They wouldn't tell me what the news was, but they just kept saying, "You need to hurry home." I can only drive so fast while observing the law. I'm sorry.
Yes, and there are 65 points in
Yeah.
Rick's post.
We could skip over a couple of them, like the first one, for example.
Well, the first one's
Yeah.
actually worth mentioning.
Well, we already talked about that earlier, but yeah.
All right, let's see. There was a question about, will housing changes allow us to have random placement, or will we still have hooks? And Horstev actually gave an answer on that they're prototyping a model for the new system. So prototyping means they're trying to see if they can get it to work. So they're not making promises, but they hope it works.
That's right.
Or at least that's my interpretation of what prototyping means.
Yep.
Yeah.
Continue on.
All right, we all very well. Let's see. Please pester Sapiens to dye his beard pink and green.
He does need to fulfill that promise. That's right.
Mhm.
Yes, he does need to take care of that, and he did mention that his wife's reaction is essentially that as long as he's not shaving it off again. All right, let's see. Any word on key mapping or trait presets? And Horstev says they're working on it now. They had an internal discussion on how they would want it to work, whether they wanted to allow them to function basically as whatever. The point is that they're working on it. They're trying to see what will work. So they're in the brainstorming phase, I feel.
Mhm.
How about this one? Rohan Housing. They've considered other places, and it's on the table, but he wouldn't say it's in the near term. Right now, they've got a lot of consideration to make about whether people will be allowed multiple houses and the process of moving from one house to another. And there's always asset creation and all that fun stuff. Right now, they're more worried about getting 13 out than creating new housing locations.
Which makes sense.
Right. And they're looking at difficulty of the game, because right now they're worried about the difficulty of the game because the game, they admitted to this point, yes, even they feel it's too easy at the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, they mentioned that several times, which I thought was a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of concerning things, I forgot to mention this when we were talking about the Bulwer notes, since it wasn't something in the patch notes, and that is that they are upping the morales and possibly other stats of the monsters in skirmishes.
Yep.
And I ran a couple of skirmishes and verified that that was the case. All right, let's see. Our first stage is going into U13 or U13.1, and say they're putting them in the borrower build on Monday so that they'll be ready for U13. They're looking at dropping them in T3 skirmishes, some of the classic instances, and potentially as a platinum drop in big battles. I don't know.
Can we just not talk about that now?
Okay. So there will be several places to get them. Now, he did not say whether that was T3 skirmish. I presume T3 skirmishes means raid settings only, but
I would hope, because at the moment it is still too easy. Someone could just solo them. Although people apparently soloing tier 3 raids, so...
Yeah. Especially with
You
the balance
say
the way
so?
it has been.
all right. What about having multiple characters on one account and the same server have more than one house? And that's where it ties into the last question about the Rohan house. And this is part of the complication of doing the housing in different regions is, will people have to foreclose on their house in one region to move to another, what to look in, what will look like, and all sorts of things like that. And of course, multiple houses, how's that going to affect inventory and like?
Yeah. It's a big issue.
All right.
Hopefully they'll
And
be able to
is there
overcome it.
any...
Anyway, continue.
All right. Is there any hope for RKDNF duration to be extended. That's a real nitpicky one, and they'll look into that. And they a couple of times Horstep would be writing things on his board whenever they brought them up, so they could look to it later on.
I actually think, we often hear things, but they'll look into it and stuff. But having him actually say it and him writing stuff down, it is a lot more encouraging than just saying, I'm sure they're looking into it, or recipients having to read that they're looking into it. This is a lot more feeling more personal and encouraging, at least to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did seem like a more direct route to getting things done.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and someone asked about how about getting a third trait slot either for free, or is it going to remain for a store purchase? And they're just playing that by ear, which is of course true with a lot of things in this game system and MMOs in general. Is there a possibility for the champ skill? I'm not going to go into the skill ones unless someone really wants them to. All right, I guess that means we'll skip the.
The Minstrel one is actually kind of relevant because he does mention later on that, again, they're looking into the difficulty. The main problem is that the player stat bloat. How pretty much every character at 95 now is capped mitigations and critical hits without even trying. That's the main issue, not mobs or skill usage.
Yes, you do have a point on that. So some things that are going to have to be looked into and that they're trying to adjust. Has there been any thoughts to give free versus creep sparring circles in the moors, where there's a sparring versus killing? And essentially the answer is, this is a time for war. It's a time of war. What are you doing? They're going to set up friendly spars in the middle of a war?
I like sparring.
Is it true?
I think what they could do is make it to where it's a 1v1 area only, because a lot of people get upset when someone comes in and crashes a 1v1. That might be a decent idea.
I would see an issue arising where, say, there's a battle going on and one side wins. It's one or two people that escape. They could run to this area and be able to fight them one at a time. So they escape being ganked that way.
Or just have it in a completely different part and make it to where you have a cooldown before you can go back into the normal Etmors, and then that solves that problem.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the things he said in the sparring area is that he may float out the idea, but it'll more likely be at a different location rather than in the Etmors.
Which would be good.
Yeah. Is it true that we already discussed free-to-play players going into the Etmors?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Is there any way to access the Entwood from the Fanghorn area without completing Volume 3, Book 13? And Meta Lions said he believes so, and that will not be dated to the Epic.
Yeah, we confirmed that in the
So,
confirmed that.
Here's a question. Does that mean it's not going to cost anything? Or does that mean... Because
it's just that's not gated to the Epic.
Right, that's what it says there.
Pack.
But
how much is it going to be?
Because one thing we didn't touch on was the fact that this is a really, really small zone compared to the other ones especially the recent ones that we've been getting. And so it'll be interesting to see how it's priced. They did say it'd be free to VIPs, so I'm assuming that free set will have some kind of cost, but I don't expect it to be the price of a full zone.
Mm-hmm. If it's more than 500, I think it would be too much.
Yeah.
I mean, 500 itself is too much, possibly, but I think I would go for it if I had to at 500.
I wouldn't.
All right. Are there any plans to expand the horse trait trees or earn extra points for your steed? And Horstep, appropriately enough, responded, part of the reason they brought mounted combat in was because we're going to Rohan, and it's a very iconic place. You basically can't go to Rohan without having mounted combat. as we get to Helm's Deep, it's very much time on the wall. If you think about the story is going, he was very hopeful that there will be more opportunities for mounted combat in the future. There are a lot of big fights coming up. When things get into the meat of the conflict, there will be a chance to build encounters specific for mounted combat in mind. So, yes, they do plan to continue with mounted combat. Now, it didn't answer the question about extra points, on whether that will ever exist or not. And the question is, do we really need extra points? Because I thought we
No.
had plenty of them as it is.
No, unless they add more things to put points into. No.
Right.
I mean, while I don't think that mounted combat is like desperately in need of changes, at least in terms of compared to the other mechanics, legendary items, it would be nice to have some more tweaks and changes to it, especially to mobs, I think, because while it is more difficult in Westro, and I think it's due to stats, it would be nice having them be a bit smarter and do certain things more, make it feel more like you're actually a riding opponent rather than when it just swerves around and hits you once or twice and then it's dead.
All right. They asked if there are any plans to change kinship management, and Horstev said pretty much it sounded like they're looking into it is how I translate what he responded. In other words, yes, they understand that, yes, kinship people will want to be better able to manage their abilities of the members, but it didn't name anything specific that they're doing in the near future. Anything else on that? All right. How do you select players for... Oh, no, that's just how the runs are doing. Let's see. Okay, that specific class. Mention people...
There's one asking about creep allies, and there's actually a good answer to it.
For creep allies?
27.
Oh, 27, yes. Can creeps get allies to help to balance out the apparent overpowerness of the creeps, and why do creeps have no mail? And it says there's just a bunch of reasons why there's no mail or allies for creeps, but there has been a problem in the past where creeps have not been properly scaled with each expansion or with rolling out of each third, second, or first age LI. So one of the things they're going to do behind the scenes with PvMP is working on ways to make them more sustainable so that when each point of balance they are happy with what they can sustain, then past levels, bumps of the first stages come out. So whenever they raise the cap or add first agers, the creeps will be able to keep up is what they're trying to adjust. So that we'll be getting first stages or LI, no, but hopefully they'll be getting a system that will properly scale once we increase the potency of the other side.
And that is the first time I've seen a developer properly confirm the exact problem with PvMP. I think, at least recently, Update 10 is the major example where they gave creeps new armor sets, they gave them new gear of various kinds, they gave them battlefield promotions, all of the stuff that buffed them up, and creeps didn't get scaled up to match it. And it's just happened all over like the past years of the Moors, and it's only now that they're apparently realizing that's the problem. It is encouraging that they actually confirm this now, and they're hopefully working on a way to make it actually permanently solve this.
All right. Very well, then we'll go to 28, which is, in the last update, there was a patch note that said monsters will be more aggressive to use their high power skills more often. Will we be continuing to make monsters more powerful, or will you work in making the classes less powerful, or a bit of both for U13? And Horstev says, monsters need to be more dynamic to keep us on our toes, so that they need to be more powerful, and that's part of it. But if you just crank that up, there will still be a problem where people are hitting their stat caps really easily. Basically, under the hood, there are a bunch of big magical formulas and whatever, and right now people are getting too close to the stat cap without having their better gear. So, what they want is to make sure that they do on a release, they ratchet up level cap to ensure that people are facing new monsters that do new, interesting things, and that there's really good reason to go out there to get better gear. So, to widen that band of what you currently have and where you are striving to get to. And there's really confident that they can do it between 13 and 13.1 with a little course correction along the way because they never know what's going to happen until the live players get their hands on it, no matter how much they put into Borer. He believes that they will get a sweet spot where things are interesting and challenging again, where people don't feel like they're just rolling over the bad guys. We hope they succeed.
Yes. Let's hope.
That not just the I particularly like how he mentions not just that challenging part, because you can make mobs do a lot more damage, but that doesn't make them more interesting. Because currently, I think the main thing I noticed is with LOTRO compared to other newer MMOs is that in those, mobs tend to have their own abilities that do noticeable things. You actually have to be concerned about some of the stuff they do. Here, sometimes they do a damage over time that does like 20 damage. Sometimes they try and heal, and the induction is longer than they would actually heal for. Stuff like that makes them kind of boring to fight. I'm hoping that they actually do work on this and make them have abilities you think, oh crap, he's going to do that, I need to stop him, or I need to back off because he's about to do some big attack or something like that. I'm hoping they work more on that.
All right. Since Oathbreaker pets are no longer gated by trait, that's just they want to get Oathbreaker armaments for lower levels. Let's see. In years go by, there were random teal drops on landscape mobs. They were extremely rare, and you had to grind for hours to get them. Is there any possibility of something like that returning? So that sounds like something exciting. And HorseDev is a big fan of extremely rare but awesome drops on landscape. Over the years, they've moved away from it. There are really two schools of thoughts on the issue. And that is it a lottery to pull really awesome, which is he personally believes, and on the other side is, will everybody want it, but not be able to get it? And so therefore, different devs seem to have different opinions on which side is better, of course. And does anybody have any preferences on which side?
They should be rare, but not impossible.
Yeah.
I don't mind having like a couple of items, as long as it's not like a full set that if you don't have that, then you're way below everyone else. But yeah, like one or two items that you can pick up and go, oh, that's really good, then yeah, I don't mind that at all. It adds excitement to loot.
Right. And the trouble is that it seems like that whenever there's something that's even 0.1% better than something else, is you have the mini maxers say, what are you, now we're forced to get this and all that stuff and grind for it for hours, and which is of course why we're in our current situation, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any chance that we will get an improved legendary item system that enables us to truly level one item with us instead of having to scrap it every 10 levels? Well, it's a lot more often than 10 levels, in my opinion. Is there any talk happening about such an approach? And they're going to try something else first, though. Something that is not specifically attached to LIs to see how that flies. It is a big undertaking to pull the engine block out of the LI system and change it. But he's always thought philosophically that if you find a legendary item, you should be leveling that pretty much permanently with finding other things to make it better being with drops you get, rather than having a hockey bag full of items you find grinding. They can't crack the LI nut in the immediate future, but they are looking at other ways to involve other gear to get things to a point where to make it a possibility. So therefore, looks like they're looking into ways of doing something that might be able to make this possible, but they can't immediately go into it.
They said in other gear, so does that mean we're going to have a different kind of item that'll be something like that?
I've got no clue. Are we going to start predictions on that?
I kind of want to, because then we can be wrong in another several episodes.
Yes.
You're never wrong. Come on.
I'm just glad that someone over there at Turbine isn't happy with their lives, because really, I hate the system as it is.
Yeah, Horse
I'd
Dev
rather not have it.
deserves. I think the moral of this story is Horse Dev deserves a raise. He should just be given the freedom to work on the LI system. I think that's the moral of the story here.
Sure,
He
I'll
should
go
be
with that.
he should be on every live stream too.
He should, yeah.
Oh,
just
they should have devs of, like, any dev at least on these live streams, because I think this one, it just really worked.
They should just get rid of Take the Hobbit to Isengard and just have legendary item live streams where they talk about LI systems in depth and keep doing them until they fix the system. I think that's what needs to happen.
Well, the thing they're doing on Monday with the item or inventory revamp, they could do a lot more stuff like that. Talk
Yeah,
about
that'd
what
be
they're
cool.
revamping or stuff they'd like to do.
Yeah.
But that's going off topic, I suppose.
Yeah, it seemed to
All
flow.
right. All right, here's one. Is any thought being given to scaling skirmishes around the chosen level to negate the ability of higher levels to slaughter lower level skirmishes?
Wow.
Is that really an issue?
Yeah, I don't know why they asked. They haven't really talked about that specifically, no. Yeah, because apparently he didn't think it was an issue either. He hopes that the paltry rewards for killing low-level skirmishes are enough to deter that. True, because let's face it, you first have lower rewards for going into lower-level skirmishes, and then 2, the penalty for running a skirmish below your own level, and between that, you get almost nothing, like 1 mark maybe out of every single control point.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like 1 mark for everything you do, and then 1 medallion for the encounters.
Right. And apparently, let's see, yeah, they're doing all sorts of weird things during the Bulwer run of Take the Hobbit to Isengard, because they're running things like Balrogs and Nurzum and stuff like that. I'd hate to have been along the route of that.
It was.
I'm going questing in the Lone Lands, and suddenly Nurzum comes up and goes, boom!
From what it seemed like, X-Rayner, who was doing the unleashing, seemed to quite enjoy it. Because you could actually hear her laughing about it at some points.
But wouldn't you?
Yes, most likely.
All right. Someone asked about shard droppers and whether or not they could ever come back to the zones that don't have shard droppers and don't have war bands. And Horse Dev says he loves this type of thing. Of course, he says he loves rare loot and stuff like that. He loves questing, and seems to be a big scary thing show up on you. Sounds like, sounds nice to him. We're at a point in the timeline of the story where bigger threats are moving into areas where they didn't before. So it makes sense to do stuff like this. So there's a possibility we may see shard droppers in the future. We will have to see.
Let's hope.
And now,
I actually don't, because he mentioned that, like, putting them in a different area from warbands. I think there's, at least in these new areas, because they're that big, I don't think there's plenty of room to have them and warbands in the same area. Like, you could have warbands, which are obviously clearly marked on the map. Everyone knows where they are. They're fairly easy to avoid. And then you could have these just ones that occasionally appear and then they go. And yeah, I think it's good to have both.
They might implement these later, but right now in beta, there's no warbands in this update. Isn't this the first zone edition that hasn't had a warband in it since they implemented the system?
Mm-hmm.
well, it's not exactly a large area, I thought you said.
No, it's not, but you could still have 1 or 2 in there fairly easily, and they don't have to be mounted. They've changed the definition of warbands, so...
In Isengard, you can't, because they have
warbands
to
are by
clear it out.
definition mounted.
Well, yeah, Isengard's out, but the Int wood could have.
Well, the warbands aren't necessarily mounted, because there are beast ones, there are warg ones, there are spider ones.
Right,
There's
that's what I'm
trolls
saying.
Yes.
walking around. Yeah, they
Yes,
could
but
have one.
I thought they were still directly designed to work with with the players being mounted. That's how they are tested, at least. So to
True,
speak.
but they had them in the Balewood, so you can't. It's not like you can't have them in a forest. So
Well, we'll see about that. Yes, and which made the Balewood really fun. I have to tell you about that.
Yeah, that
All
place
right.
is horrible. Come on.
Yes. Someone asked whether Bulwer will ever be available to non-U.S. players, and I should tell you, yes, Bulwer is available to non-U.S. players. Any players from any place, from any server, can go into Bulwer, and they now have it so that you can transfer from any server into Bulwer. Now, there are some characters on the European servers that might not be able to copy successfully due to the differences in the code between Codemasters and Turbine, which is one of the reasons why we can never have transfers on servers, because failing transfers completely and losing things on Bulwer is a minor thing compared to losing it on the live servers.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're finally implementing the ability to do it this way, because for a long time they had like the Europe beta on Bulwer, then the American or North American beta on
Oh
Bulwer.
yeah, Rise of Rohan, I think that was, wasn't it?
With Riders of Rohan and with Rise of Isengard, I believe they both had that pretty hard, and
Oh yeah, that was major hassle.
it was a major hassle. And you'd like get excited for a beta event, and then you'd realize, oh, that's not for me. It'd be terrible.
Yeah, it was really nice that I had capped characters on it, that I have to have a capped character on Laurelin the first time they did it, so I had no trouble, doing on both sides. But not everybody had that luxury.
Apparently not.
And just a note too, right now, there's no way to install Bullroar.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that is the
they said there's no
disadvantage right now.
timeline on when it will be available either.
Well, they're hoping to have it before the end of this testing cycle, but I have a feeling it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, on the warband subject, Fredos did make a good point that this is the quote-unquote redeemed part of Fangorn. So that is a good point. It's a lot more peaceful area because it's supposed to be. So there you go.
Right. Very well. Okay, someone asked, what are the item levels on equipment used for? Is it a future development thing? And I'm sure you are familiar with this, where you have the minimum level to use something, and then you have this item level, which is well into the hundreds on the gear you have in Helm's Deep. And the item level gives them a way of differentiating the potency of an item when compared with other items. For example, if you're a level 85 and can wield an item that is in the low hundreds, there may be many items in that range that you can wield. This gives you another way to compare them and decide which is better for you. Item level tells you how much juice the devs put into the particular item. It's not a feature developed thing so much as just another way of differentiating items.
So there you go. It's just confusing to players, and I really wish they didn't display the numbers.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, yes. All right, the change to kinships where they're no longer disband when members fall below a certain number, does that mean that anyone can just start a kinship now and have as many people as they want? And yes, that's pretty much the case.
I'm surprised they said it that way, but I don't know. That the answer being that much to one side of it makes me seem like I don't want this as much now. I gotta be honest.
All right. And now this was a rather strange one because number 48, someone asked, question about whether the exclusive horse-related pre-order quest might come back. What do you mean? They never left. I mean, I do this. I've done them very recently on one of my newer characters. In fact, one of my videos, if you saw my videos in my Runekeeper video, you notice I ran several of the horse quests.
He might be asking if people could get them if they haven't pre-ordered.
Yeah, but that wasn't really what the question said, so...
See, I took it to mean they were asking if there would be other quests like that.
That could be the case.
That's how I took that question.
This is why, if you ask a question, you should be clear on what you're actually asking, because I'm sure Horstiff thought one thing when he read the question, and we have 3 different answers here, what people thought that the question meant.
I think I have a solution. Just tweet Pineleaf whatever your question is. He will edit it for you. And, yeah, problem solved. So just tweet every single question you have for Turbine. to @PineleafNeedles, and he will edit your question perfectly. I promise you. Unless he's not available at that time, in which case you might not get a response. But he's not ignoring you. He's just not there, and by the time he would be able to respond, it would be too late. So there you go.
Right. Very well. Now we'll go into the ones after Aaron Campbell joined us.
Indeed.
All right, let's see. Is there any chance to be able to combine LIXP ruins? And Horstev adds that to the whiteboard, and I just hope that gets past the whiteboard into a more concrete area, because I have some characters who have tons and tons of bag space being taken up by all of these crazy LIXP ruins.
At this stage, I pretty much just trash any ally rune that's lower than 10,000. Because you just get so many of them, and you can't do, there's no point using the 160 runes. It's really, there's no point to it.
All right, here we go. Number 53, the biggie.
Oh no.
Is Kate surprised? Yes. Is Kate surprised? Now you're surprised. And are you willing to give us a hint on what it might be? There are cookies to bribe you with. And to go into the short, they discussed it around a little while, and essentially Rowan asked Horstev, are they up to a point where they're far enough along with it that they can now talk about it? In other words, that they're confident that they can do it. And after an okay on that, it was announced
we actually have an audio file announcing this, so I think we'll go ahead and play that right now.
Okay, we have an audio file for that.
The surprise is now my surprise, yes. And more than anything, I'm really waiting on Horstev's sort of some thumbs up for this before I talk about it.
I'm not sure what your surprise is, but I'll put my thumb up. In.
Yeah, you two are the primary people working on it.
Oh, that?
For later in the year, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can talk about that. That's fine.
Okay, then we're doing a new class for LOTRO for later in the year.
What? A new class?
Oh,
cannot believe that. Oh my goodness.
Just that little thing. Just a new class. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, that
minor little change.
And we all called it, didn't we?
I think that you might be wrong on that. You know what, Brax? I actually have an audio file for that too, so I think we're going to go ahead and listen to how wrong we were on this.
Will we see a new class in 2014? I'm tacking that on there. And let's go ahead and go with Drac.
No, we will not. Not in 2014, at least.
Okay. Pineleaf?
Ooh, good question. I know that there was that hint that was dropped. So I'm trying to question what it was, whether it was for a new class, as some people speculate, or whether that entire thing has to do with something they want to do with the trees. But I just can't think of any way they could add another class right now and still maintain our. I think it'll be too complicated. I think it'll be too complicated to add a new class this time, so I strongly doubt it.
All right, Brax.
No new class.
Othellos?
Nope. Like you just said, it's just no. I don't really see any room for another one with three light, 3 medium, 3 heavy. It's just it doesn't seem like a place where one would fit. The only one people keep bringing up is the Bjornings, and I don't know.
I don't see that now.
So apparently it's not the Bjornings, is what we were right about, but
you
we were
made that
wrong
pretty
about
clear.
the entire class thing, and Pineleaf went so far to say that there's absolutely no way that there could be a new class in LOTRO. I conveniently avoided answering this question.
I did not say there's no way.
You came close
said
to
he
it.
strongly disagree.
All right, fair enough. Still, we were very wrong on that. But I'm glad we're wrong. I'm really glad that we were wrong on that, because this is a great thing. I still can't believe that they went out and then said it for this year that there will be a new class, because there's no expansion this year. In the history of LOTRO, it's always been expansion. In the history of MMOs, I mean. In the history of MMOs, usually there's not a new class that comes out unless there's an expansion. And so for them to do it without an expansion, I think is pretty amazing and took everyone off guard for sure.
And that's probably why we voted
but-
no on that.
For the record, this was like at the end of the Helm's Deep review, so it was like 4 a.m. for me. I was tired. I didn't know what I was thinking. So I think it's fair just to count me out of the being wrong thing.
I don't
And
think
here's
it's
the other
I don't
thing.
think that's the
Here's
case
the
with
other thing.
us.
We all predicted Ent play, so that kind of makes up for it, right?
What?
Yeah.
I
think
never
so.
said there wouldn't be a new class. I said I wanted to hold it captain. Hey guys, I'm
Kate's
still
right.
awake.
Lily Kate's right. She's the one that is
I
correct
called
here.
it.
Everyone else is wrong.
Sorry,
Christmas play, I told you so.
Well, we could if I had that file ready.
All right, very well. Anyone want to
Fredulous
make...
in
I
the
think it counts. I think this is a
Yeah,
new class.
Fredulous in the chat says this just in: Turbine will always do exactly the opposite what LOTRO Players News predicts.
You know?
I'm sure they're not going to remove the ally system then.
I can tell you there, if you've ever listened to one of my YouTube things, you will notice in a recent one where I mentioned that I am unable to predict the outcome of a toss of a double-headed coin onto a flat surface. So therefore, he being wrong is completely within character.
Fair enough.
There's that fine logic.
Never claimed about anything, especially predictions.
I just imagine Pine Leaf being
Anyway,
like. I just imagine
who
Pine Leaf going
wants
to
to
like.
fill out the NCAA brackets now?
I just imagine Pine Leaf going into this eternal quandary. Well, will it be heads or tails? Well, if I flip it over to the left, it could be heads, but there's a 27% chance that it could be tails. I don't know.
I'm going to flip it in 5 minutes.
I'm going to flip it and find out.
Flip it in 5 minutes.
He would make a bunch of notes about which way it could go.
At least 10 pages, yeah.
2 minutes.
30
All
seconds.
right. So now let's get back to the new class. Anyone have any forecast on what they think the new class will be?
Because our last
Well,
prediction
yes.
went so well.
Yeah, well, since the last time I suggested something got so severely rebuked, I'm not going to say anything.
I think that it almost warrants a new weapon type, like a halberd or something like that, which I guess there are technically in there, but I think it almost warrants some new weapon type for there to be a real new class, or some use of existing weapon that's way out there. I don't expect them to do a hybrid class, but now they're probably going to make that since I said it's not going to happen.
Well, actually, concerning a hybrid class is how do you think the class changes are making a new class would make a new class possible? Because
That's
they
the
said
weird
that
part,
it's
yeah.
something, and that's something that could point to that it could be a hybrid class, which
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't
I
know.
was running over about 4 speculations at the moment. Some of them are completely off the wall. The wackiest one was a blue wizard of some kind.
a blue
That's
wizard.
a bit too close to the Lord
Well,
Master.
what I thought was interesting,
it's
which I don't think the Blue Wizard would ever get lore approval, but they did say that they did get approval, lore-wise,
Yeah.
for this new class. So whatever it
And,
is, it
Rowan
has approval
did say,
now.
Yeah.
Rowan
You've
also
gotta
said
remember-
that he did go to the talking estate, I think, about this, and then he said when
Yeah.
he came back, he seemed very happy about it.
Yeah, that's what it
Alright.
was.
Yeah. Now
I think
concerning
the
blue
most-
wizard.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, concerning blue wizards, you gotta remember is that the blue wizards went to the east, and in fact, you notice the cults from the Easterlings are based on the 2 blue wizards.
Hmm. Well, here's my 2 cents, is that we are going near Gondor. I don't know if they'll have anything anywhere near themed to it, but it would be interesting if it was something that Gondor allowed, or some type of character from the lore that takes place in Gondor for them to get inspired by.
Yeah. Another one of my speculations also from a Kim member was some kind of like ranger slash be a hybrid class again. So I don't, it's just a
Yeah,
speculation
I don't know.
purely.
think Rangers are an unlikely one because the Rangers are an elite group A and B. You notice that in the Moors there is a Ranger class for session play.
That's
It's
true.
too similar to Hunters, I think.
Yeah, it really is.
Except they don't get cool pets.
That being
except
said,
for,
Well, they might get cool
Huorns.
pets.
Huorn pets.
I mean,
We're going to be trying to pronounce that name all day.
Horns.
horns.
I don't want a treat pet.
Horns.
I want a kitty.
Horons.
You're on.
And what's the most popular speculation? A Bjorning.
Bjorning, and I'm not saying it like
Yeah.
much again because, yeah, that is like the longest term thing people have suggested for years.
I mean, here's
Yeah,
the thing.
but
The
I
fact
don't-
that they had to go get lore approval, I mean, yes, they did have to get lore approval on all their classes, but the fact that they mentioned that they had to go get lore approval and it was approved makes me think that it might be something closer to a Bjorning than like a more, a different type of warden or something like that, a different type of something that we already have. So
Something that's more out there and not.
Yeah.
not so, yeah.
So
I
it
wondered
doesn't
about
sound
that
like
too.
it's-
It's like maybe there was some doubt as to whether it would actually be lore appropriate, so they
Right.
really had to go double check.
Yeah, and the fact that they actually had to have, the executive producer go over there to check and not just like over a phone call or something like that means that I think it was probably a fairly big deal, but maybe I'm wrong. Who knows?
All right, now when you say Bjorning, are you talking about someone who is
Shapeshifter.
within
A
the
shapeshifter.
realm? Okay, you do mean that. Okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that you were talking literally a shapeshifter as opposed to someone who was living in Bjorn's realm.
Not be a human.
Well,
that can change
if you
into
are
an
someone
animal,
that's
wouldn't
living in Bjorn's realm and not a shapeshifter, you wouldn't really feel that heroic, would you? I mean, you'd be like the downward side of society, looked down upon by all the Bjornings, and it'd be terrible.
Well-
It'd be a huge mess.
How much do they really discuss? Do they really say in Tolkien's works that the Bjornings are shapeshifters?
It's highly suggested. It's very highly suggested in one
Okay.
of the passages, yeah.
I looked it up the other day.
All right.
In the trilogy, they kind of gloss over it and kind of hint at that, but in The Hobbit, it is explained more that they are.
Yeah.
Well, in The Hobbit, you only have Bjorn. The Bjornings
Right.
I got the feeling was built afterwards.
Right, and so
Right.
there's been a
There's
lot
definitely
of
something in the appendices.
there's been a lot of debate on it, but yeah, there
Huh?
is a big portion in the well, not a big portion, but there is mention of it in the appendices that they did grow in numbers and became an actual, I guess you could call it a society, but some type of organization that was there. So,
Because they started off in the mountains, didn't they?
yep.
That almost seems like you'd
So-
have
and
to
they
have
were
an
three
entire
family
new.
groups.
You'd have to have an entire new race to go with that class, wouldn't you? It'd have to be a race class combination
You
only for
would.
that race.
You
it
would.
wouldn't be the first case of LOTRO doing that, though, would it?
I think it would be the first case of LOTRO doing that. Actually, fellas.
Well,
What are
only
you
men
talking
can play captains.
That's true, but that was in the existing game already. They haven't added a new race, so I mean.
Yeah, I just mean it wouldn't be the first
Right,
example.
yeah,
of
that's true.
A race, only one race having access.
That's
to
true.
it.
Well, all right. And where would their starter zone be if that were the case?
In the Shire, of course, Pineleaf. You have to have bears in the Shire. Are you kidding?
Oh, Zinger says in the chat, shapeshifter mounted combat. It's a bear riding a horse. Be scared.
Oh, I don't think they need mount. I don't think a bear would need mounted combat.
It's a terrifying thought, though, isn't it? Bear riding on a horse coming towards you.
Yeah.
At the very least, you need
All right.
like the tackle skill that the burglars should have had, where you can like jump off your horse and turn into a bear and tackle something, and stab them in the neck.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
we need more stabbing in the neck.
We do need more stabbing in the neck. This needs to happen.
All right. I always wondered whatever happened to that particular feature that they had in the early betas of Helm's Deep.
Indeed.
Because I don't think I've ever seen a goblin stab someone in the back after knocking
Yeah,
them
it
off
was
their
it was there
mounts.
in the original beta, but maybe that was a major cause of lag or something like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a possibility. All right, so right now it sounds like everybody seems to be favoring to be a shapeshifter.
Don't shape our opinions,
Christmas
Plan
lights.
Leaf. We're not
Oh,
locking down to a
From a
prediction.
combat perspective, it is the most unique and different
Indeed.
from what we already have.
Yes.
But from a Magic Combat as an example, it's going to be hard to fit it in and gear and stuff like that. It makes
Well,
it
I mean,
more difficult.
you'd have to create all new like models and animations and things, but it would be easy just to make them animate to have their bear form be mounted combat, or just let them only be in human form when they're doing mounted combat. I mean, there's
I
options there.
suppose. But yeah, I think that is the least unlikely option that we have so far.
It is a very unlikely option, but I don't want to say it's a possibility even. It is an interesting idea, and it would be a really cool idea. I would be up for it if they did implement it. But does DDO have a shape-shifting class? I want to say that they do.
Yeah, the druid.
Yeah, so it's not like Turbine hasn't animated something
They
like that
added
before.
that was added not in the most recent they added it in the Underdark expansion is when they added the druid, and I know that because the last time I played DDO, I bought that expansion so I could play a druid.
Yeah, so it's not unheard of that Turbine has implemented a class like that. So that is at least I don't know if that's even giving more credit to the topic, but it is possible.
If Andang, Drac, and Pineleaf all swear that there's not going to be a Bjorn in class, then we might get one.
That is true. But then I might be wrong. That is true, though, Lillicate.
That is very true.
But we were
I
right
just
about
can't
it
wait
playing,
until
so.
the first day when they open this new class and the entire starter area is just flooded with them. That's going to be so much fun.
Oh yeah, I'm going to.
That's true, yeah. Because there hasn't been a new class in 6 years now. That's a long time. And it's gonna get a lot of people back into LOTRO. I think it's gonna get a lot of people to be more interested in LOTRO if the class is different enough to be interesting. I think.
Well, I'm sure there's at least some people who are going to say, "No, this totally breaks the lore. This is the worst idea Turbine's ever had." There's only
If
the Tolkien
I think
estate is okay with it, I am.
That's true.
As far as I want to think.
That's true, but I mean, at the same time, I think any class that would come out that's new, people would have issue with, as we have seen with existing classes in LOTRO as it is.
Runekeeper.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, the Runekeeper was very controversial when that came out.
It was very controversial. There was even an IGN interview that made it sound controversial, so even the mainstream press thought it was controversial, so.
All right. Let us see. Is there
no other questions really? After that point, that are interesting.
Well, what about the question about the creep invasion of the Freak maps?
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Well, they made it sound like it could.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I think it would make a lot of low-level players really angry because they wouldn't be able to stand up against them.
Unless they let them in like 95 areas.
Yeah, limit it to 95 areas or something like that.
Maybe then, but even then, I don't think it would.
And
work
maybe give all the free players a buff to where if they don't want to opt into it, they don't have to, and they can.
They would have to put it somewhere where it's away from a hub, so people can't be like attacked while they're turning in quests or doing crafting or anything like that.
Yeah.
It would look like an open area, something like that, maybe. But other than that, no.
It looks like, Horsted made it sound like that they might accidentally flip a switch at some point during a special weekend or something like that. But yeah, it does sound like there are a lot of hoops they would have to go through if they're ever going to have open world creeps. Are there any hopes for? As you said, I don't think there are really any interesting ones yet. So I guess we will close that topic unless anyone else have anything they really wanted to discuss from here.
I think we talked about it enough. I think an hour of discussion on these notes is enough.
Yeah, true. Then let's go to the store sales then. Draculetta.
We have a free sample this week of 100% Mark acquisition for 90 minutes times 1. Use the coupon code MARX, MARX 9. And as always, that is 1 per account, so use it accordingly. Also, now through March 24th, you get double points on all of Turbine point purchases through the store. 25% off select cosmetics, shared wardrobe, cosmetic outfit slots, mounted combat trait specs, and war steed cosmetic slots. So once again, it's another sale this week.
Yeah.
Get your shed wardrobe this week.
If you like cosmetics, it's good. Aside from the mounted stuff, because that's impossibly expensive.
Yeah, the slots and the shed wardrobe are the best ones, I think.
Right, I guess I'd have to agree with that. All right, then let's go into our LOTRO Players news then. And
Finally.
the first thing is, yes, and there is a poll up. And the question is, would you buy session play packs?
This is from the blooper last week, in case people are curious.
That's right. We
Yes.
had a whole announcer voice thing about that, but the majority, with 66%, say no. But 34%, which, considering the number of people who vote no, they won't buy anything on the store each week, I think 34% is pretty good for that sort of thing. So, 34% say that they'd actually buy them. So I think that Turbine should implement them. I think I would really be interested, at least, test it out, do 1 pack and see if people would like them. Because there's so many cool session play themed packs you could have, like the Path of Bilbo, or, even in the Third Age, there's all sorts of session play themed things that you could do that would not take that much development time, especially if they're in existing areas. Because you have all the appendices, and you can go really in any time period in Middle-earth through those, to an extent. So I think that they could really open up LOTRO quite a bit with that.
All right, very well. Any other comments on this before we head on? Then let's go into LOTRO Players episode 6, which apparently Anding felt that I had a pretty long session in saying what I did the previous 2 weeks.
I was told to put that title down, so I can't be held responsible.
It's not his department.
We all agreed, Pine Leaf.
Or in other words, Braxwolf's told the title to me, and it became the title.
Okay, and that is where one of our cases of having real fun in the Earthwing of Fornost, if I recall properly.
As opposed to this week.
As opposed to this week, where we did it where we died in a different wing.
The Fire Wing was fun, at least for our group.
It was fun but challenging, which is how it really should be for a
The Shadow Wing, not so much.
Oh god, no.
Well, at least I finished that stupid quest with the warg.
You were
That's
pretty
the
excited
achievement
about
of
that,
the
Pine Leaf.
I had to have some goal for this I knew that we'd achieve. We also had an unexpected vidcast. Well, okay, I guess we were expecting it. And where we had someone stole Ruby Ray, and Pashimo had to get Ruby Ray back.
Yeah, this was a cool plotline. I really enjoyed this week's Unexpected Vidcast. I thought it was one of their better episodes, in my opinion at least, and I highly recommend everyone goes and checks it out.
Also features the poem that Pashbar wrote for Kirillin of Windy Acres, which you won at the Fellowship Walk auction.
Yeah, that was really good
so
too.
Another good reason to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And now we come to Brax's pick of the week.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, there was a post on Game of Sutra by Alan Wilson called "Do We Actually Value People in This Industry or Not?" And this is somewhat related to the layoffs that we talked about at Turbine a couple months ago, but also kind of a larger problem within the gaming industry of how projects are managed from a development lifecycle perspective. And it's fairly evident as you watch these kind of cycles go by. There's a big update, then there's a layoff announcement a couple weeks later, then they're ramping up, there's another big update, that they're actually just kind of, this is their cycle, right? They get rid of people to make the expense sheet look better on the balance side of things, and then they ramp up when it's time to get some more stuff done. Well, what Alan Wilson asserts here is that not only is that kind of a morally bad thing to do because this is people's livelihoods that we're dealing with, but it actually, if you take into consideration a link that he puts in here from, I believe it's Texas A&M professors that talk about their economics professors. If you take a different approach to recording human capital on your balance sheet, it's actually a bad financial thing to continue to ramp up and release employees. And what they really should be doing is coming up with persistent teams that do things more efficiently because they have a history with the company, a history with the game, and representing this as human capital on the asset side of the balance sheet so that it actually balances out better and your shareholders can see the investment that you're making in people at your company as opposed to the cycle that we seem to be seeing in the gaming industry. And I just thought it was a really interesting read. It was a much different take than what we've seen the last year, or probably several years, in the video game development industry. And the paper that's linked to in the Game of Sutra article is called Human Capital and the Balance Sheet by Kenneth M. Washer and Srinivas Nipani. And I'm not going to pretend to understand the formulas that they talk about in this paper, but if you're one that's interested in economics and formulas and can make sense of this, you might find this a very interesting and in-depth study. So I just thought I would put that out there because it is kind of disturbing. It's not just a moral thing, but it also can be a financial thing. And I think that in any industry, there's kind of this copycat attitude that, well, this is the way our competition does things. So instead of putting a lot of time and effort into actually thinking about the way we should do things, we're just going to do it the same way too, because they seem to be successful at it. So this is kind of a challenge from Alan Wilson for these gaming companies to think outside of the box and hold on to their persistent teams instead of the way they have been doing things.
All right, very well. All right. Does anyone else have anything they wish to discuss before we close out the show?
I think that was a great article, Brax, to choose from. That's awesome. It is a really well-written article, and I'm glad you pointed it out.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed it too.
All right, then we'll go on to the question of the week. And Etheros.
Yes, I thought this one was pretty appropriate given the stuff on Bora this week. I was actually going to put this for last week, but they pushed it back. The main question for this week is the topic of revamps of any kind, really, going back to old stuff, making it better, and generally improving it. The first question I think is just a general, can they qualify as content? Imagine huge quote marks in that word.
Does that mean to imply that your answer is on more toward the negative side?
No, I just mean what is content as a thing.
Yeah, I think revamps, if done in the right way, can count as content. If they're adding quests, if they're doing things like that, then it's adding content. If it's revamping things, it gives you a reason to go and redo the content. But I don't think that it's necessarily adding content. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. What do the rest of you think?
Yeah, I would agree. When I first read this question, my thought was, well, if they're just moving quests around to improve the flow, maybe not. But if they're adding a certain percentage of quests to an area, or especially if they're adding landscape changes or anything like that, I guess I fall back mostly to questing though, because that's a lot of what I do. If there's 10 or 20% more quests in an area, I think that's content. I don't. It depends. If there's only 10% more quests, then I hope they're not going to charge you for a whole new area or something weird like that. But I think it can, depending on how much you're looking at.
Yeah, Terry Edwin from the chat says, I like having other people around who share my hate for Moria when I'm stuck doing that content. So they like having other players going through the grunge with them. That's a good point. The entire point of MMOs is to play stuff with players, have an RPG that's massive with other players. And so I think that the revamps, they might not necessarily add in content, but it will give a great opportunity to go back to that content and experience it with other players. I think that's a good point.
I think thing you touched on the different types, like whether they add new quests and stuff. Evandim, I would definitely consider, because it added so much to that zone, and in general, just the game. Moria too, I would think. There's a side thing here, though. What about mechanics, or like, say, if they did a huge skirmish revamp, or just like legendary items, or anything like that? Stuff to faces, or things you interact with, not quests. Would you consider those possibly being classified as content?
As much as I love the inventory bag changes, and believe me, they might be my favorite part of Update 13, and possibly any update since Mounted Combat, I can't classify them as content, I think. I think that that's just revamping a system. I don't think that that's content. When I think of content, I think of quests, stories, and things like that.
Yeah, I'm more on the side of revamps qualifying as maintenance, except for the really big areas like the Evandim expansion. I remember playing that before it was updated. It was horrific. And afterwards it was a lot smoother. There was more content. There was the whole little extra hobbit area. So it was much more fun, and I would consider that content. But like the pre-update, I would think that's maintenance, keeping your game fresh so that your people have been playing for a long time still want to play. But at the same time, keeping your game updated and fresh and looking good and fitting in with the lore when you consider how many people play this game, because it represents, a certain image and ideal that, like, many of us have grown up with.
Yeah. Just to clarify, Lily-Kate, where do you put the turtle quest in Bree?
The whole quest.
Oh, content. For me.
Yeah. Finding the theme here is like the scale of whatever it is they're doing. If they're wide scale, then it could more likely qualify as content, or if it's new stuff within that revamp. I think the problem I find with some of this stuff is like when they say it's just maintenance or just quality of life stuff, it kind of like it can seem like it's making it seem less significant. Like, I love the revamp. It's one of my favorite changes they've done to the game, period. In my opinion, it's Scarecrow's best work. Like, I'm sure it's not intended, but it can kind of seem that way. Which I think is why it kind of... Like, the only way you can otherwise qualify it is content, but it's not, because it's not new stuff in that sense.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of struggling with this question.
Yeah, Krell from the chat says, quality of life changes aren't content. He says Evandim felt like a 50% increase in content. So he seems to be of the opinion that Evandim was content and everything else wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, that feels right.
Are there any other opinions on this first question?
Come on, Spider, what you got?
Sorry, whether or not it's content or not.
Right.
Yeah, I'm listening. I agree. I think it is content because you get a lot of new and interesting things to go along with. And I mean, you get so much more out of an experience that otherwise would have been dull. I think that really is content, because what else could it be?
Alright, so what about the inventory bag changes? Do you think those are content?
That's different. That's a change in the UI. I mean, like, a change in questing content, group content, that is content, not a bag.
Okay then.
All right. The second question here is how do you balance revamping old stuff and making it better versus just adding new things? I know this tends to be debated on the forums a lot because, like, I've seen people suggest just stop revamping things, get making new content, new stuff to do. Like, I think at one point they were doing a lot of revamping over a long period of time, and people were seem to be getting tired of it. How do you balance the two things?
That's a. Go ahead, Brax.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know that I've seen a lot of examples of this, but what I've seen of the Update 13 notes so far seems like a pretty good balance. They've given us some really good quality of life stuff, and they've given us little dabs of new stuff to do here and there as well. So if they continue on that path, I think that you're kind of pleasing both camps, the ones who want new content all the time and the ones who want you to go back and fix the old stuff.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that LOTRO's really been lacking. And if you look in a lot of their expansion reviews, aside from Mines of Moria, where they added new classes, you see that quite a bit. Where it's like, even in like update reviews, they'll talk about how there really wasn't anything for the the new player. There wasn't anything in the early areas, and I think that it's important to have a balance to keep a strong MMO. If you're constantly revamping your old areas to make them better and better, and adding on new content on top of that, I think that that's a great formula for producing a successful MMO, and I think LOTRO kind of ignored that for a while. They were just focusing on content. We're going to keep going, and we're going to be going to Rohan. It's going to be great. We're going to go there, and it was great, but the old areas were kind of lost behind, and I think that the new focus that LOTRO has is finding that balance, and I hope that this continues moving forward, and with the new class coming, it sounds like that it will.
For me, I think it's kind of hard. I mean, I obviously tried to think of this question because I want them to be hard to answer just straight up. I think if there's an area of the game that's already there that's almost completely unusable, that should be priority for some sort of change above new content. Because if it's not being used, then it's just a waste of space, waste of code, and something should be done with it, even if it's just being removed. So that should be priority above content if it is that dire situation. But if it's just like something like the Bree revamp or something like that, like little quality of life changes to make people happy while they're playing, that is like something to do more in your own time or the developer's own time if they want to do it like that. I don't know. I'm the one who came up with this question. I can't even answer it.
Yeah, I did feel that we had quite a few new expansions come out too quickly for me. I haven't even got down there yet with my Land Rebel character. But I did feel that some of the early areas did need a revamping and they got neglected a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this year and then seeing what new thing comes maybe next year.
I think that is a good point, actually. These recent years have kind of felt a bit hasty, if you would put it in the net way. It's kind of like maybe...
Now, don't be hasty.
Maybe it's the way that the level camps rise like every year, but it kind of feels like you're not given time to just rest and just play with what you've got. Like, it kind of seems strange to say, because, I mean, always having new stuff to do, you would think is a good thing, but
yeah.
If there's constantly new stuff coming, you never feel like you're on top of it. You always feel behind. I think a fair amount of people have, or used to at least feel that way.
Yeah, and from a lore point of view, taking this time to really look back really fits in, because we can just spend some time smoking some Toby and Isengard. It's great. Be just like the hobbits.
The Hobbits you can wait for the rest of us to catch up.
Just don't have any worry in the world for Frodo and Sam. Just be nice, smoking at Isengard. It's great. By the way, LOTRO players does not in any way condone smoking.
Except pipe smoking because it's really cool. Just saying.
Okay then.
And that's on the essence.
Did you just say you want to smoke pine leaf?
Pipe smoking.
Oh, that's totally different.
Pine smoking is something else.
Don't smoke pine leaves.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, with that, I think it's time to go on. We did not have any donations this week, but we would gladly accept them, and we would love to have your support. If you'd like to make a donation, simply go to the donations page where you can help support the podcast of LOTRO Players and also help support the site. We have $5 and $10 mentions where you can donate and get a mention on one or all of our active podcasts or an episode depending on the amount. For $5, you get a mention on the podcast of your choice. For $10 or more, you can get a mention on all of our active podcasts. As for reviews, we did not get any reviews this week, but if you'd like to give one, just post them onto iTunes, and we will love to read them. And our featured comments this week, first, Braxwolf. You left a comment on the blooper video for episode 37.
Yeah, it's because you guys decided to have so much fun without me last week.
All right, so what did you say?
Here we go.
I said, it sounds like fun. I'll see if I can fit my big head back into the newsroom next week.
So, nobody laughed after I made that comment last week, so I'd like to personally apologize to all our listeners who were not able to experience the comedy that was there. And sorry, Brax.
That's because everybody was just so shocked that you would call me names on air like that.
That's true.
All
if
right.
I meant it.
No, listen, there's a noticeable tension here. We're really just messing with each other, right? I mean,
We are?
Andang said I had a big head after doing a podcast with American Golden Star, and that's why I didn't show up. That was the joke, but it's because it was glossed over, it sounded like he was really being super mean, and I wasn't even there to defend myself.
Honestly, these like after recording talks, we've had pretty much almost every episode of the news, and they're almost always like good fun or interesting discussions. I think that's why we started doing these bloopers. They seem to be worth listening to.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of viewership for the YouTube bloopers that we posted up, which we are now doing that, assuming that there's more than just one. If there's just one, it'll end up in the podcast feed. But, you know, I think that people like to hear the bloopers, and hopefully we'll be able to continue with them. I enjoy them.
I love bloopers.
We
I
know.
enjoy messing up.
You still have to fool us that you're not recording, otherwise you'll get nothing.
All right, and Gareth left a comment on episode 37 of LOTRO Players News is, "Your only South African fan? No way! Allow me to be number 2. Been listening since episode 1 and CSTM for years before." So, okay, so that's at least 2 South African fans then.
That's awesome. If you listened to episode 1 and are still listening, you know, email in to us or leave a comment. We would be surprised that you're actually that dedicated and are willing to listen to all our voices for that long. So thank you guys.
And thank goodness there are no emails this week, so no
No poems.
poems. Yes, probably a good
where's
week
the
not to have many
poem?
poems.
Lily Kate, write one in real quick.
Make him say one in like a London accent.
We will save that. We will save that for next week if she did that. You can contact us at lotroplayers.mymiddleearth@gmail.com. You can follow us at Twitter at lotroplayers @lotroplayers, Andang at pvmp_andang, Braxwolf at Braxwolf, Draculetta at Draculetta_72, Etheros at Etheros, Lilykate at Lilykate Buggins, Mystery at Mystery XOX, and Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles. And
You're screwing him up, Andang.
There's a poem in the show notes now.
You have to read it.
Apparently, Andang sent us an email, or a show note edit, more likely, that has, "Pineleaf is a spider, he is quite a fighter, he makes the podcast brighter.
And it's never
Bravo.
been so true.
Bravo.
Lizzie says you're rubbish at creeps.
Oh, yes.
You should really
Thank
be
you,
playing on the
Lizzie, for Your
Freeps.
fine endorsement.
Yep. She said you're good at skirmishes.
What she's
Well,
going to
that's
do is she's going to go upstairs and repeat that in Italian, right?
She's snoring and she's full of flu, so I don't think she's going to be doing anything at the minute. And she sent
Very
in
well.
a little something to Andang, so that'll be for another week.
All right. Very well. Very well. You can join us live. LOTRO Players Adventures goes live every Saturday at 5 o'clock p.m. server time, and LOTRO Players News goes live every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. server time, and that is United States Eastern Time. And you can join us by going to LOTROplayers.com/live, and be sure to join us in the YouTube chat. Thanks for listening, and remember, this is Pine Leaf Needles, and remember to skirmish responsibly.
Heal Pine
Your
Leaf.
pine leaf.
For sex.